So I felt like talking about Ballerina from the world of John Wick. It's been a couple of weeks since the movie came out, and I saw it on opening weekend here in India. And I really enjoyed the film. I didn't have time to talk about it before, but uh, I thought I had some opinions to share on it and on the John Wick kind of franchise as a whole. I think for me, the movie really worked. One of the things I was quite thankful for is the runtime of the film, that it came back closer to that 2 hour mark, because I thought John Wick Chapter 4, as great as the second half of that movie was for me, I thought the first half was a little bit too dragged on and it didn't quite grasp me, but by the end of it, I was fully on board. I think for me, the world of John Wick and kind of the lore that they've built around it is perfect for these kind of spin-off movies with newer actors coming in and kind of showing a different perspective on this different sort of factions that are involved in this world. And I think for me, I would prefer to see this direction for the franchise in the future rather than something like a John Wick 5, because I thought Chapter 4 was a good ending for that character and I think it should have stayed there. Um, I think because of kind of the nature of the world with so many different assassins, and it's kind of been established that these assassins live within the people through pretty much the entire world. And I thought the best part of Ballerina was that it brought a new physicality to the action, and that opens up a lot of kind of avenues for the action to take place. And I think a lot of that was kind of pushed forward in the uh, trailers for this movie as well, where there was an emphasis on uh, Eve having to fight, like, because she will have to face many opponents that will be stronger than her. She would have to take different kind of routes towards most efficiently beating them, and I think that's what kind of grants this movie a breath of fresh air, for it to be feel like something that exists within this pre-established ethos, yet manages to evolve it in ways that does not make it seem like they're undermining John Wick or his prowess in any way, but giving this new character who has her own capabilities, her own kind of ways of dealing with situations and how she's able to overcome them. And that was something that I was really glad with about this movie, because I feel like when a lot of spin-offs come out or a lot of sequels come out these days, they have a tendency to kind of undermine the previous character, or show this new character as the next big thing. They kind of by that very virtue make the previous characters look weak or nerf them in many ways. uh Few instances that come to mind with regards to this is like the new Star Wars trilogy, or even what they did with like Doctor Strange's character in Marvel, which is one of my biggest gripes with the later phases of Marvel. But I digress. I thought that they held up that legend of John Wick extremely well, even when, I won't spoil it, but even when Keanu Reeves shows up in this film, I think it's his presence is well justified and his capabilities are not reduced in any way at all, and it just feels like a shift in perspective rather than kind of trying to overhaul this series. And the reason why I say that these spin-off movies work for me in the John Wick universe is, first of all, it's not like a massive leap kind of universe. Like, it exists in the real world with a lot of this underworld assassin thing happening kind of in a covert way, with the Continental and a completely like different economy functioning between the assassins. And I feel like because of the nature of these films, where they're extremely heavy on the action, and that is kind of the main attraction, the main cool factor that you go to them for, I feel like bringing in new actors with different capabilities, different physicalities, different ways of kind of approaching enemies could make for a very interesting evolution of this series, rather than having the same character drag on for too long and kind of like taking the wind out of the sail for this series. For example, Ana de Armas in this, I think, does an exceptionally good job of displaying that uh, different sort of physicality with belonging from that particular Russian group, being a ballerina and having that different approach to action. I could see this transferring just as well to someone who is much bigger than John Wick, maybe someone like a Dave Bautista type person, not him per se, but like someone of that physicality, someone like the person who plays Jack Reacher in the new series. Like I can see those people being brought into the universe and giving like a new twist to the action and a new way to approach the action sequences that avoids it from becoming stale and keeps the series going. Um, Other than that, I think the vibe of this movie was pretty immaculate. I think the first time Eve gets her first assignment and she goes to that club sort of place, it felt right at home in the John Wick universe. To the extent where I felt like in John Wick 2 and 3, like the ending sequences, or at least one of the sequences, even in 4, seem to end up in like a similar kind of place where it's like that techno vibe, a lot of mirrors, and kind of that futuristic yet grounded approach. Where to me, those films started to muddle together with each other to a certain extent. Where in this, I feel like that new approach worked really well, and it felt like comfort while also, because it was giving you a new perspective through this new character, it felt also like a breath of fresh air. Seeing this character operate inside that world was extremely fun for me, and I thought the action sequences were all fantastic, and even kind of the end entire sequence in the snow area gave me a lot of like Last of Us Part 1 vibes, where that entire cult of cannibals exists in that game and that whole tangent. I thought it was very reminiscent of that for me, and I thought it constantly gave me enough to grasp onto to stay engaged in the story as it kept moving forward. And my biggest concern was that the lack of John Wick or Keanu Reeves in this film would be to its detriment and kind of force me to keep going back to how John Wick was better. But I think that did not happen because, again, of the previous point I mentioned of how there's a new perspective and that allows you to kind of sink into the world again with a new outlook. And because of that different physicality in the action sequences, it gives you a fresh taste of what a different assassin, a different hitman in this world would kind of feel like. And I think I really appreciated that. Having said that, I don't think there were a lot of prominent characters other than Eve in this movie that I would really remember. Like, I don't think the villain was particularly memorable. I liked the idea of this cult being kind of outside of the rules of the assassins, and they kind of have their own thing going on, and we don't mess with them, they don't mess with us kind of pact happening. I thought that was an interesting angle, but the villain didn't really grasp me very well. I think also the subplot of Norman Reedus's character's child, who kind of mirrors what Eve's character was, not being given that choice and her fighting for that child as her dad had done to save her. I thought it was a novel idea, but it didn't really grasp me very much. But because I don't go to John Wick for those kind of things, I'm more there for the action, for the spectacle, for some sort of character arc, but mostly the cool factor of these protagonists of this world. It didn't bother me too much, and I was pretty on board for the film for most of it. I think all the fire sequences were very well shot, and kind of the oozing out of that fire gave me that sense of thrill, that edge of the seat kind of final act moments, and I really, really enjoyed that. So yeah, overall, I think Ballerina was a pretty great film. If I were to rank it, like amongst all the John Wick films, I would probably put it above John Wick 2 and 3 for me, because like I said, those films kind of mix together for me and don't really make as distinct of an impact. While I don't prefer this over 1 or 4, I think it's still a pretty strong movie that engaged me, and it felt like a movie going experience with a lot of good action packed in and a lot of good moments. And yeah, I hope to see more from the John Wick world in this direction rather than milking the character of John Wick, making a chapter 5 where his story kind of seems excessively dragged on to this point. I think showing new perspective within this world that they've established would be the much better route, and would also open up a lot more avenues for the action sequences, for the action choreography, if they were to bring in people with kind of different physicalities that could work better in this world and give us that new kind of take towards what how a different assassin, a different hitman may approach the same mission that is difficult to evolve once you have made so many movies around the same genre. But that's about it for now. Peace.